Hello, and welcome back to Obscure Undead. This week, we are probably just going to do one episode. It's going to be a bit longer because, as you can see, I have two lovely guests. And we're going to be talking about Forever Grey's new album, 8 tracks, released April 1st this year, Sympathy Garden. All right, so I'm Azzy.
And I'm Xander. You might know me from the internet as Awfully Sinister. I'm a goth and dark wave and industrial DJ based out of Phoenix, Arizona. And I also try to write in my spare time, and I have a pretty obnoxious presence on Twitter and TikTok, which is probably where you've seen me.
Yes, Xander is a great person to know online if you are looking for a resource for modern dark wave and goth music. I'm James. I'm one half of the modern EBM, synth pop, dark pop, whatever you want to call it, band Male Tears. We're obnoxious as well. So right now we're going to be talking about Forever Grey's new album as of 2022. This is the newest offering from their discography. It's called Sympathy Garden. It's about 8 songs long. In my opinion, I feel like it's a big step from what they've delivered in the past, especially when we're talking about the very beginnings of their EPs like Alabaster Chamber. Then after that, at one point we had Departed, which was, I feel like that was the big cultural splash for Forever Grey. Me personally, I own like that record on several different formats because I feel like it's kind of seminal for like the DIY kind of independent dark wave and post-punk sound. Xander, do you have I guess like an opinion on like what you think the record has done for like the discography as a whole, like in the greater outline of it?
Yeah, so Forever Grey, speaking for myself, speaking bluntly, I was pretty touch and go with their early stuff from a few years ago. I was like, oh, cool, new Forever Grey. I think there were other bands at the time that I was a little more invested in. They kind of fell by the wayside. It really wasn't until Departed that I think I took greater notice than I had before. I thought there was a little more flavor, a little more going on with that record than I was used to hearing in whatever odds and sods I would hear in the past. And certainly with this record, and I do agree, I think it is a major step up for them. Sympathy Garden, just in the arrangements and the types of instrumentation they use and the melodies. For anyone who is not familiar with Forever Grey, they are, I think, what a lot of people imagine when they imagine post-punk, or they imagine like, ostensibly goth music, where, kind of very deep baritone, sad vocals that at times are a little almost kind of veer into mumbling with that that steady kind of stoic bass line. And this record doesn't necessarily veer too far from that, but there are some there is a greater sense of adventure there. I think their choices of like synthesizers are put to good effect. I think they make the record sound a little more filigreed, a little more fanciful. There's a little bit more of mirth to their sound than there was before. In past Forever Grey records, it's kind of, staring down at your linoleum floor in your shitty apartment and shuffling from side to side. I think with this record though, I think you're kind of taking your eyes up a little bit and staring out the window, and the view is still bleak, but it is a view nonetheless.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I feel that. I think that personally, I think what kind of really set this apart from Departed was that the vocals, as much as people like outsiders to the scene or to this kind of music are aware, there's usually a ton of like effects and reverb and delay on vocals, and it creates kind of like this muffled, like blurry, like effect, like you're hearing it like, through a tunnel, through like a sewer, or you're hearing it through like a well, like a voice coming from the bottom of a well. But I think like what struck me immediately from like Lucid Dreaming, the first song, was that I could clearly hear what Kevin was saying, in a lot of the singing, and like I could clearly hear a lot of the parts. And even like a couple tracks later, when the second vocalist Anna was singing, like I feel like I was really understanding the narrative that they were projecting on the songs, rather than just it being kind of like this sort of like it's less vibey. It is more of making a kind of like emotional statement this time around. like clarity is something that I feel like is like a running theme, and not just the writing, but just the production style, the mastering of all the music. I felt like it was a little bit more confident. They wanted things to be more clear. They wanted things to be more defined in the center of the mix, which I think that's going to stick out, because I feel like a huge pitfall that a lot of artists, especially me, I'll admit, we just love our fucking effects. We love delay. We love vocals that are just slathered in reverb and chorus effects. I think like it's really surprising when I hear an artist in this day and age choosing the route to, you know, be a bit more stripped back. You know, you are still hearing a lot of that on this record, but I feel like they're making it easier on the ear. Like, do y'all agree?
Well, that's interesting that you say that the vocals are more clear, because on Lucid Dreaming and Cold Hand, I found that there was just entirely too much reverb on them. I had a hard time understanding what he was saying. Yep. But it got clearer as the album went on. But I agree with what you're saying for everything else, because the instrumentation, the melodies were simple. The instruments were simple, but it was layered in such a way where, because of that simplicity, it made it so that every single piece could shine when they were simple. Sometimes it was just vocals, a really basic bass line, and the drum line, and it was perfect. And everything had their own space to just exist in a song. Nothing was drowned out, and that was beautiful. And then when the synths were added on, because it felt like this album built from the beginning to the end. So you get the synths coming in sort of about a third of the way through, like being more prominent. And then as you continued on towards like Nothing Ever Changes and Tragedy, you start getting a little bit more of these separating segments of the song, you know, like the verse from the chorus or from the bridge, you know, these little, I don't know what they're called, but like synthy sound effects. But it was very clear. And I think that you're right. Just the ability to do that, to make something simple in that sense, with everything having its own place in a song, really is a mark of confidence for a band in what they're doing.
You know what? Maybe I'll rescind a bit of what I'm saying. I think you have a point here, and I think you're right. However, I think what I'm mistaking here is not, I think they are still using just as much effects this time around. I think the difference, though, is that we're not getting as much slurred kind of delivery. You know, I feel like the definition, like the enunciation of the lyrics, you know, it's far less like, it's a lot more like you're hearing, like, I think from the very first song, like I thought I was starting to hear like a lot of, I was hearing a lot of like the old school post-punk where like you're clearly hearing the words that they're saying, you know, and I think that yes, there's obscurity because of the reverb, but I think that the delivery of the vocals this time around is a lot more like pronounced, you know, like I feel like it's like they were willing to like really put their foot forward with like the words this time, you know.
I know when I was listening to this record, and Azzy, you brought up Nothing Ever Changes and Tragedy, and those two songs actually really stand out for me as well, because I think one of the common comparisons I hear is, you know, Forever Grey are often brought up in the same company as a group like Lebanon Hanover. Obviously, they have those kind of lonely, droning vocals with the
that Gallo dance vibe.
Or like She Passed Away or something like that.
She Passed Away. Those two songs in particular, though, maybe it's just me, but my first thought listening upon those songs were actually two records in particular by Double Echo, which were Period Rooms and Burning in Blue. There's something about the way those songs are arranged and produced. It's like walking up a staircase in like the dead of morning. It's mostly dark with just like thin rays of sunshine coming in through the blinds. It's all dark, and it is still shadowy, but there are these little speckles of like light and spark and glitter that are coming through, and usually like in those synth lines, it's a little more wistful. There's a little more mirth to what they're doing, a little more, certainly more confidence than I was used to hearing, where it's, you know, I think mostly just like, again, just the stoic bass line and the sort of slurred droning vocals. And I like that stuff too, but There's more for me to kind of sink my teeth in with this record than I have found in the past. And I do think that not just the production, but also like those synth lines really make a big difference, at least for me.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I listened through this album on multiple times, just on its own, doing various things, as I do when I listen to an album. But today I listened to it like 5 times back to back, just driving around Tampa because I went to IKEA. And every single time it started over. Like, it didn't have that jarring sense that some albums have when starting over. It just felt like a very good like build up towards the end and then restarting over with lucid dreaming. And I think you're right. It does have that vibe of like you're sitting there with your hot cup of coffee, just having, that 6 a.m. existential crisis, and you're just trying to feel better about your day, watching the steam rising up and the dust floating in the morning light. Absolutely. I think that's a really great description.
Yeah, definitely. I totally get what you're saying, because it's definitely the sort of music, and this is definitely the kind of record that you would be listening to when you're trying to, kind of visualize in your head like a music video of yourself. Almost, like if like you were going to be like the feature of like a music video, this is the exact. I feel like this kind of music, especially the brand of like dark wave that Forever Grey typically delivers, I feel like what I really like about it is that I feel like it's the qualities that I like about it are just so I feel like it's accessible, like I feel like if I had to show someone an example of like modern dark alternative, or even like, the forbidden G word, I think that it is a good example of like genuine like gothic music that isn't exactly heralding to the past too much. I think that there are a lot of like, let me caveat that by saying that there are a lot of like references to like, post-punk from like the 80s. Like there's a lot of like, the effects and the writing and like just kind of the rigidness of a lot of the synthesizer work. Obviously, right? Like there's retro aspects to it. But I feel like that is no longer really kept in the past. I feel like that's just a mixing style. I feel like that's just an aesthetic that like, it's been around for the better part of the last decade now. Like I think we can just stop thinking the 80s is a decade, and it's more of like a mixing style. The 80s is just a way to speak about a certain aesthetic that like people keep bringing back. So I feel like it's kind of a moot point to say that it's not doing anything new. I feel like what Forever Grey is doing is just perfecting a formula, because I feel like what it's doing is concentrating those elements into just all the best parts of it. It's like vitamin G pills.
I have a similar take as you, but from a different perspective. See, I hear some of these older elements, but in their music I hear elements that we hear in modern bands as well, like very identifiable as what we hear in modern bands. And I don't feel as though Forever Grey falls into that trap of being derivative, like I hear from. It's one of my big criticisms for a lot of, releases, is being overly derivative either of what's going on now or what's gone on, 40 years ago. And that's what I really like about this album, is because this is definitely an album that is really sort of, I don't remember the word that I'm thinking of. It encapsulates sort of this exact moment in time.
Definitely. Xander, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and not to contradict what you're both saying about Forever Grey kind of charting their own path and certainly making a statement about the viability of modern post-punk or modern dark alternative music as its own valid genre or style. I know one thing another artist that I was thinking of aside from Double Echo as a newer artist that I was thinking of listening to this record were the more, I guess, more danceable moments, the more, not sunny, but certainly like shinier moments of like Asylum Party.
Yes.
There are moments of Asylum Party. I mean, Asylum Party, you know, I'm sure we're all familiar, and whoever's watching is familiar with them. And, you know, certainly the progenitors of that French cold wave sound is very downtrodden and very despondent. But there are moments in Asylum Party that are kind of airy and kind of starry, a little more, there's a little more bounce, a little more skip in their step when they're creating their music. And that was the same feeling that I was getting with this Forever Grey record. And that frankly also made me take greater notice to this one than I had in their past music. You know, I appreciate and I enjoy a lot of modern post-punk bands whose whole thing is just that plotting bass line, the vocals that are, you know, things are difficult. But I think this one's a little, this one is not afraid to, I think, step out into the spotlight a little bit and glower and beguile the audience, as opposed to trying to stand in the back and only allow its silhouette to come through.
Mm-hmm. Here's a random question for both of you. Did either of you get Goodbye Horses vibes off of Broken Home? Or is that just me?
I did, but I felt like I was just, you know, I thought I was suffering psychosis or something, because I did get that, like it did pop into my head, but it wasn't exactly obvious. I think it's just a matter of just tonality and just general kind of emotion.
Like the tone on the vocal melody, I kept thinking of Goodbye Horses.
Yeah, like that one is a standout for me. I think it's just hitting upon like a certain kind of like morose, sunny feeling. Like it's kind of bittersweet. I think that like it's one of the songs to me that I feel like was delivering the best like kind of emotional climax, you know? I mean, it is only 8 songs long. We have like 8 tracks to really go off on. But I feel like, especially in this stage, like it's really hard to sustain this kind of sound much longer than that. And I think that just, you know, there's a lot of factors for like why albums are less than 10 songs these days. But, you know, and I mean, totally, I know why. But I think that like for my purposes, I think like that makes things a lot more consumable. I feel like I can probably say a lot more about it because I have a better grasp on it when it's shorter, you know? So there's a lot that I just think that like for a lot of people, I can understand why like the constant kind of like and the constant you know, from like both vocalists, you know, like I understand how like a lot of people like think that is like redundant, but I feel like what you're missing out on is that it is very synth and mood driven, you know, like this is not an album where you can like pick out that's the single, you know, because they all have potential to be, they're all on a very similar level. And I think that like that's what I appreciate about this one, whereas like you said, Departed, when it ends and it starts over, I know, because like the very first song on that record, it sounds like a beginner song, like, or like, you know, the start of a record. However, this one, I feel like it is one that you could just infinitely loop, you know, like, because like the vibe of it is consistent and there are like some adventurous spots. Like I think on the second track or the second or third track, I think that there's a part where the vocalist's voice just gets run through like some kind of like weird modular hell where it becomes like, you know, and like I was like, that's an experimental part. And then there's another part like much later in Nothing Ever Changes, and also the other side where like it's letting like the synth arpeggiators like the like kind of take over, you know.
I like that.
Right. They definitely let like the new wave elements shine like a lot more on this one. It wasn't afraid to get dancey. I think, you know, of course Departed's very dancey, but this one I feel like it was a drop in hot bangers, you know, like every song, like it was a concentrated playlist of like good modern post-punk, you know. I think like that's what I would say ultimately about it.
That is another thing I did enjoy about the production of this record. And I mean, hey, like I don't know anything about production or mixing techniques or anything.
Yeah, you do. You're a DJ.
I kind of do and I kind of don't.
I know.
You know, like She Passed Away. I mean, I love She Passed Away. You know, their music, when I listen to it, it's very regimented and very steady and syncopated. And I like that. I think what I liked about this record, and also what I liked about, what we were talking a little bit before, that Girlfriends and Boyfriends album, is those new wave elements that you mentioned, James. There is it's a little more loose. It's a little more playful. It's still dark, and it's still meant to despair, but the way that those elements are brought in, like with that line on Broken Home, or some of the lines on Nothing Ever Changes, it's like, oh, there's a little more wiggle room here, a little more swagger.
It's interpretable.
Yeah, it is. It's just it feels weird to describe this music as fun, but one of the things that really attracted me to goth at an early age when I was getting into this stuff for the first time was that kind of Neverland, that kind of other world that it promised, like watching old, Alien Sex Fiend music videos, or even like old Switchblade Symphony music videos, that kind of like we're taking you into another world, and there are moments on this record where it's like, oh, these are the this is what you put your ear to a seashell and you don't hear the ocean, you hear these synth lines in the new Forever Grey record. Just little atmospherics and accent marks to this thing that we know and love and enjoy walking into through the gates. My psychobabble about Forever Grey.
I think it's perfect angst, but this is definitely like Zoomer's. This is like gonna be like Zoomer playlist music. You know what I mean?
Oh sure,
yeah. It's up there with like the Moreaus and like the and the Lebanons. Mm-hmm. I think that every time that they put out new material, Forever Grey in particular, and pretty much every other side project that they're involved with too, including Milliken Chamber, I think like there's a very clear, as they grow in profile, I feel like there is a clear distinction between each release. And I think that with this one, whereas with Departed, that is one of my favorites of like, I think it's like 2019 or 2020, but I think it was good enough for me to, I guess, like own on cassette and vinyl and tape. But this one, I feel like this is kind of seminal, I feel like it actually did the big step forward where I feel like I'm connecting to it, but not just because it's background music, but because I feel like I'm hearing a band speaking to me through the fog and the drunkenness and the like bunch of people in PVC like bumping into you or whatever on the dance floor and you can barely see a thing. I feel like I'm hearing a band speaking to me through all the gauze and like the fog. And for that, I would say that, if I had to rate it, I would put it up there. Like it's an 8.5 to 9 out of 10, I'm glad that they've done this. So, thank you all.
What's your favorite track?
Thank you all for doing this. Favorite track, I would say it's either Other Side or Nothing Ever Changes.
Xander?
I'd have to go with Nothing Ever Changes or Familiar Faces.
Oh, those are my two. Nothing Ever Changes or Familiar Faces, but we all agree on Nothing Ever Changes. That track is fabulous.
It's a banger.
Awesome. Well, everyone should go check out this album. We have waxed poetically for quite a while on it. It's absolutely fantastic. Go listen to it, come back, tell us what you think. We'd love hearing your opinions. I don't know who else reads the comments. I read the comments. You can read the comments too. They're great. But thank you, James, and thank you, Xander, for coming on to review on short notice too, actually. This was just I saw you guys talking about this on Twitter. I was like, yeah, you want to review?
Yeah, I mean, I love geeking out about new music.
Me too.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you can find them both. James is at Male Tears pretty much everywhere. Xander is Awfully Sinister pretty much everywhere.
Yep.
Except when he DJs. Sometimes it's just by his name.
It used to be DJ Xander. But I think I formally changed it to DJ Awfully Sinister within the last few months. So
okay, now I know.
Nice.
Now we have an official.
Yeah.
It's canon. You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. I changed it too late for them to change the branding and the marketing for that Easy Goth Festival we did a few months ago. So it's just DJ Xander, but from now on it is DJ Awfully Sinister. So
Okay.
there you go.
All right,
Nice.
sick.
Nice rebrand. All right. So thank everyone for watching. Thank you both again for being here. And thank you to the lovely Patreon community who helps support these videos and makes them possible. Because honestly, without everyone's support and without everyone's love, Obscure and Dead wouldn't exist. So we'll catch you soon. Connect with us on socials and take care of yourselves. Bye.
This ignorance of consciousness, despair.